we start, let me just reiterate that we only have 6 weeks left for instruction. Again, we only have 6 weeks left. So again, please don't forget to turn your work in. If you still have some missing work, then go ahead and turn them in. All right, now today is the 10th of November. Your objective is still the same, and that is to identify the function of different body systems. Your focus question, overarching question, still the same. Focus question: what is the function of the different body systems? Now, yesterday we've talked about homeostasis and how it is very important for your body to be able to maintain that internal state of balance. Okay, now today we start with the organization of life. I've also talked about this partly yesterday. We said all living organisms always start with a cell, okay? A cell is a basic unit of structure and function of life. Everybody starts with a cell, okay? So there's trillions of cells inside an organism's body. Now, as I've mentioned, if you have a group of cells having the same structure and performing the same function, then you'd call that your tissue. If you have a group of tissues having the same structure and performing the same function, then you'd call that your organ. Now, as I've mentioned, some examples of your organs would be your eyes, your brain, your heart, your lungs, your small intestines. Those are all examples of your organs. Now, if these organs work together to perform a specific function, then we call that the organ system or the body system. So we've mentioned yesterday that we have a total of 11 body systems. Then, of course, all of them would keep you alive and keep you healthy. And so all organ systems would make up your organism. Okay, now we go to the different tissues that you have. Now, there are 4 different types of tissue. These can be found in your screen. You have your muscle tissue, your epithelial tissue, your connective tissue, and then, of course, your nerve tissue. Okay, so the first one here are your muscle tissues. And of course, this allow motion. These are the type of tissues that would help us in movement or in motion. Now, we have 3 different types of muscle tissues that we have. The first one is skeletal. Second one, smooth muscle tissue. Then, of course, you have your cardiac muscle tissue. You can see their pictures here at the side. Now, these 3 are all very different in terms of location. Whether they are striped, that means they're appearance looks striped. You'd sometimes call this striated. And of course, whether they're voluntary or not. By voluntary, we mean you don't really need to control them so that they'd function. Okay, so again, these are the differences between your 3 muscle tissues. Their location, whether they're striped in appearance or not, and whether you don't need to control them or you control them for them to function. Now, in terms of location, your skeletal muscle tissues, based on its name, this is attached to the bones. Okay, so these are the muscle tissues that we use for movement. These are the muscle tissues that are attached to your bones. Your smooth muscle tissue, these are found lining your internal organs. So lining your small intestine, your stomach, your large intestine, your pancreas, your liver, etc. Your cardiac muscle tissue, on the other hand, you all know that cardiac in science would mean heart. Okay, so when you say cardiac arrest, that means a heart attack. When you say cardiologist, that means a heart doctor. Okay, so when you say cardiac muscle tissue, this can be found in the chambers of your heart. Now, in terms of whether they are striped in appearance or not, striated or not, the only thing that's not striated would be your smooth muscle tissue, hence the term smooth. Okay, it is called your smooth muscle tissue because it does not have any stripes. Okay, it does not have any stripes, hence it is called smooth muscle tissue. Okay, your skeletal muscle tissue has stripes. Your cardiac muscle tissues also have stripes. Now, whether they are voluntary or not, again, when you say voluntary, you don't need to, you need to control them for them to work, okay? But when you say involuntary, then you don't really need to control them for them to work. Now, the only thing that's voluntary here, I have a mistake here. Okay, let me just go back and correct this. Okay, so this should be yes. This should be no and no. Okay, now again, when you say skeletal muscle tissue, this is voluntary. That means you really need to control them for them to move. Okay, you need to control your muscle tissue or your skeletal muscle tissue for them to move. So if you punched someone and you go to court, you can't just say, I did not control my arm, I did not control my fist. Okay, so you cannot say that because, of course, your skeletal muscle tissues are voluntary. You need to really control them for them to move. On the other hand, your smooth muscle tissue and your cardiac muscle tissue are involuntary. That means you don't really need to control them. They continue working even if you are not controlling them. So you don't say heart, pump, okay? Your heart will just pump blood even if you are not controlling them, okay? It's involuntary. Now, another thing would be your smooth muscle tissue. This is a reason why you shouldn't go to bed with an empty stomach, okay? Because your stomach, of course, is lined by your smooth muscle tissues, and these are involuntary. They continue pumping, or they continue grinding the food even if you don't control them. So that's the reason why you shouldn't go to bed with an empty stomach, or you shouldn't even go to bed with a very full stomach. Okay, so you should wait at least 30 minutes before sleeping. Okay, so again, these are the differences between your skeletal muscle tissue, your smooth muscle tissue, and your cardiac muscle tissue. Any questions before I go to the next tissue type? Okay, now we go to the second type of tissue that we have here, and this is your epithelial tissues. Okay, so this can be found on the surfaces of your body. Majorly, or most importantly, this can be found on the skin, but not only there, you can also find this lining your blood vessels, your urinary tract, and your organs. Now, these are very important because they form a barrier between the inside and outside of your body. Hence, it provides protection against viruses, against foreign objects, okay, that would like to harm your body. So again, that's your epithelial tissue. This is found on your skin and also the surfaces of your body, forms a barrier between the inside and outside of your body. Now, the third type of tissue that you have here is your connective tissue. This is your blood, your bone, cartilage, your joints, and fat. Okay, now sometimes your connective tissues can be dense. That means they're tightly packed. Examples for this would be your bone and your cartilage. Okay, so these are your dense connective tissues, your bone, your cartilage. Now, your loose connective tissues, examples for this would be your fat and your blood. Okay, so again, these are connective tissues, can be densely packed, your bones and your cartilage, or can be loosely packed. That is, your example here would be your fats and your blood. Now, the last type of tissue that we have is your nerve tissue. Now, you know this to be very important. This exists to carry messages through the body. This is involved in our stimulus response mechanism. So if you are touching something that's hot, your neuron, your nerve tissue is going to send a message to your brain that that is something very hot. It's going to hurt your finger. And so your muscles are going to be sent some messages from your nerve tissue, and so you tend to let go of that hot object. Okay, so that's your nerve tissue, exists to carry messages through the body, involved in your stimulus response. Whenever there is a stimuli or whenever there is a stimulus, you'd always have your response, and that's because of your nerve tissue. So again, those are the 4 different types of tissues that you have. Again, when you say tissue, this is a group of cells having the same structure and performing the same function. You have your muscle tissue. We've talked about the different types of that, your skeletal, smooth, and cardiac muscle tissues and how they're different. We've talked about your epithelial tissues. This is in the lining of your body. You have your connective tissues, can be densely packed or loosely packed. So you have your bone, cartilage, your fat, and your blood. And of course, you have your nerve tissue, which carries messages all throughout your body. Okay, so this one is involved in the stimulus response mechanisms of your body. Any questions before I let you go and I ask you to do your independent work? All right, if you have no more questions, go back to classroom. Your independent work can be found there. It's called Body Systems Vocab. It's very easy. You can use any resources, any online resources for you to complete your work. Then after that, of course, you have an exit task, which can also be found in your classroom.